Hello, hello, hello.
Hey guys, what's up?
Everyone. My Discord just crashed on me. I didn't see. We put this in there too.
Yeah, I put it in Discord.
Sick. Sometimes, half the times, my Discord just says loading, like updating 1 out of 1, and then it just will crash all the
You
time.
just have too many unread messages.
Maybe.
This
And then I
is
get to
like
like
you
click on it 3 different times, and then it finally works.
Yeah, I gotta get better at Discord. It's the boomer in me, I guess.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay.
Emails
I
are
just-
going out. Everybody. Thanks everybody who's joining, who's hopping on the call. So good to have you here.
Yeah. This is really interesting. I just went onto Discord right now, and like the feature requests, frequently asked questions kind of forum. It's just kind of cool to scan over that and just like seeing like the same things that we're talking about in there too, about like music scrubbing. Sweet. How you guys doing?
Good. I'm good. Sorry, I'm trying this new thing. We're going visual and audio, multimedia.
Visual and audio.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a
Get more interactive, guys. Yeah, we're gonna chat with you and answer. all.
yeah? So, folks, if you're hearing this, you're seeing this, come say hi in the chat. Say where you're calling in from. It's so cool. I feel like last week we had people from, I think, Saudi Arabia, France, London, Las Vegas, UK. So if you do want to come and say hi, please do. We'll put you on the. Or is that too much pressure? Is it too much pressure to put you on the screen?
Maybe.
It's too much pressure.
Great. Hey, Damon. How's it going? Nice to see you.
We got Mujabid Ali. Hello, hello. Excited to see where people are writing in from.
Sweet.
Damon Muncie. Sweet. So exciting.
Well,
These Wednesdays are awesome.
Oh, Louisville.
Ooh,
Nice.
Damon from Louisville. I think you're a first person to write in from Louisville. This is exciting. You have that badge, that honor, the the Louisville badge. That's great.
Yeah. Sweet. Dubai. Mohammed from Dubai.
Oh, Mohammed, I think you were here last time. Thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Sweet. All right. Well, what do you guys want to talk about? I mean, it's been a big week. A lot of exciting things have happened from a product side, and also I've gotten super excited over the last week over a couple customer categories or people use cases. I know a lot of people, couple people, they wrote in last week and they were asking what are more use cases, like of JellyPod that they can get inspired by, and I've been really inspired over the last week personally. Based on 2 use cases, and we can jump in or we can wait to save that until later.
Let's jump in. Let's jump in.
Okay. Cool. So one of the things, Mark, if Mark is on the call, and he is intermittently, so
This is
hello,
Mark Morgan.
Mark Morgan, if you're on the call, he has this awesome use case, and so he's an in-person sales trainer. He's a corporate trainer, right? So a large company will have a sales team of say 100 people, and he'll come in and he'll help them be better at sales. And usually that involves like a 2-day, 3-day session where he comes in, he fires them up, he identifies problems and gives them next steps of how they can improve. But here's the knock. I mean, this happens to all of us. We learn something great. We're like, oh yeah, I should do that. And then you just forget and you fall back into your old habits, right? Anybody who's tried to learn how to a skill, a sport, a lesson, right? You quickly in times of pressure, you fall back on what's oh, sweet. Sorry. I'm going to keep anybody who says hi, I'm going to put them on here. So he yeah, everybody who's done that, we've all had to practice. So this is what's so cool is he creates a personalized podcast for every client that will go on for say 12 episodes. So for 12 weeks after your lesson to remind you of like the 12 things that you've identified in a way that's personalized to your business, right? Mm-hmm. So you're selling, the way you sell a pencil is different than the way you sell a washing machine, and it's different than the way you sell an enterprise SaaS product. So he creates.
How would you sell a pencil?
Is that one movie?
Or a washing machine? Well, there's the "How would you sell me this pen" from Wolf of Wall Street. But
yeah.
How was
I don't know. I think we need Mark to chime in. I don't know how I would sell it.
You said this is cursor for writing. Right?
Cursor for writing.
Yeah,
Yes.
Cursor,
X for
cursor
Y.
for washing your clothes. AI-powered washing machines.
AI-powered pencil.
Yep.
There's that joke about the like I think it's like every country I think has a spin on this. Every space faring country, but it's like like there was a big initiative at NASA to make a space pen that wrote upside down, and then like Russia brought a pencil.
The interesting thing about that story too is that like it leaves off the second half of it. It's like having graphite floating around in zero gravity is extremely risky to puncture the spacesuits, and so it was just like we didn't want to risk astronaut lives by using a pencil that could break off. Because imagine a sliver of graphite. That was the whole reason. I mean, there's pros and cons too, but it's always funny to hear that story because
it's one of those stories where I want it to be true, but there's a lot, some urban myth to it, and the $2 million price tag is also a lot of it's just basic research and not on the pen.
Totally. That spins up one of my favorite words, apocryphal. Apocryphal is, I think, refers to this kind of stuff where it's sort of like these like almost like pseudo made up.
You
stories.
use that with quotes a lot, like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some quotes are those people, but it's incredible how many quotes get given to like Einstein, and I'm
or Churchill.
And it's like, I mean, if you invented physics or invented calculus, but like the person who invents people in real, like people who I know who are really good at calculus are not the same people who are really good at like quotes.
Right.
So it's funny to just like Confucius. Yes.
I tweeted out at Paul Graham today. Let's see if he responds. No chance. But it was interesting talking about this, like quotes. It was something about like writing and like music, and how like there's just similar relationship between like meter and rhythm and cadence and like these things. And you always see like these quotes that are out there that they're just like, I don't know, the ones that like the great writers they just like slap. And I always wonder, like, were those great writers also musically talented if they had access to like the ancients, if they had access to an orchestra, would they have been like a composer like Beethoven or like Shakespeare? If Shakespeare, would he have been also in another alternate universe a great musician? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, fun fact, apparently Shakespeare, there is a solid contingent of the literary community that thinks that Shakespeare is really the combination of three different people.
Yeah.
Whose works have been sort of accreted over time.
Yeah. Because he just wrote so many different plays, and there's and he was apparently an actor and stuff. So based on his, like, he had no reason to have the education or the grasp to have written those plays. But
right.
And some have different style, like everything was written in iambic pentameter, but there's a couple lines that are written in the opposite. I forget what pentameter is. The stress is on the first syllable.
Right.
But I think King Lear has one line that appears.
Yeah.
Before we get
off track, Jason, just to kind of finish your thought on the learning process. So what is the doctor? So he sends out these personalized podcasts to his patients, right?
No, it's not a doctor. He's a sales trainer.
Yes,
And so he creates a personalized podcast for every client, right? So now, and the kicker is he sells this for thousands of dollars as an add-on to his core offering. So because it's a way to do ROI, right? If you already spent a good amount of money on the in-person session, you don't want it to disappear in 3 days.
Yeah.
So now you get something that the key book for this that I find that this like hits me so hard with is there's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
It's often by like the billionaires quoted as like one of their favorite books of all time, right? And it's like just 10 tips, one of them being smile more. But the hard part isn't reading the book. The hard part is implementing it and continuing to do it. and like we all get, have a bad
Right.
day and we don't smile, and then, or one of the 10 things that, that is. So that he's taking that and he's turning it on its head. He's like, let's give everybody a podcast to listen to on their morning into work, right? Instead of like spending your time on something that won't make you better that day, what about just plug in for 10 minutes and get reinforced in this thing that you wanted to learn and your company paid money for you to learn?
Yeah, and you mentioned this in another podcast, and I saw a couple of clips about it too, which was so cool. Was that the repetition part is so important, because a lot of times we understand something, but then we forget it, and there's like you have to hit it 2 or 3 times before it sticks. And so podcasts are a way for you to just refresh. And I wonder, like like this could be applied to so many areas as a teacher, where you come up with these like I forget the word, where you do it every 2 weeks, and for like spaced repetitions, where you have these mini lessons that reinforce what you already learned in the main lessons, like snap sound bites, etc. So I think it's pretty powerful for that.
Totally. I mean, Pearson, I think last week, or maybe it was a few weeks ago, identified that like education is the number one thing people are creating on JellyPod.
Yeah.
As far as the plurality is concerned.
Right.
And I think that just goes to show that like podcasts are an incredible medium for like a fun way to keep content in your ears, reminding you to do something right.
Right. It's also interesting here. Like, I think number one, like the number one category is education, and like this learning journey that everybody like goes on. I think a lot of people want to learn like throughout their life, and like lifelong learning is a theme that, I really resonate with. I think it's fun. I think learning is genuinely fun. And like we're entering in this age where there's all these new tools out there, like AI tools, JellyPod being one of them, AI podcasting, learning these tools. I see Eric in the chat over here is talking about he's early on his AI journey. And I think there are so many people out there right now that are either overwhelmed or with like all this new technology out there. And they're like, I want to learn all this stuff. And like, how can I go about it? And, there's so many cool platforms, and you don't have enough time in the day to dive into it all. Like internally, we have this Slack channel, Cool Tools, right? And it's just a Slack channel where we just post a link and we just like make some comment about like this thing and why it's cool or whatever, and just share with the team. And we'll not be able to go everything that goes in there. We're not going to be able to dive into deeply. Some things just like aren't relevant. Some things are super relevant, but we just won't have the time. And so it's super cool to see like, you, Eric, here asking about like what AI does JellyPod have or have planned, and what platform JellyPod uses, and all this stuff. And like at the end of the day, we've built all the technology here. It's not related to ChatGPT. It's really just this interesting, this piece of software that we've built with intelligence sprinkled in, and the ability for you to be creative and generate podcasts.
Yeah.
And
and in terms of integrations, we I guess I don't know if that was your question, Eric, but we let you submit your RSS feed to Spotify, Apple. What's the other one? Big one, Anchor or
YouTube.
YouTube.
Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music.
Yes, So you can automatically, once you set that up, and RSS feed, like you can generate your podcast and it just goes out automatically. And so that's why it's so powerful to have that.
Right. And
one integration that we've been talking about a lot over the last 24 or 48 hours is music. So there are a few AI tools, and we're not sure which one to use. And there's that space is all very new as well. But people keep asking for background audio. They keep asking for adding in. So like we added the ability to drag and drop.
I mean, we all love music, right? It's being so cool. Actually, I'm curious in the chat if you guys please comment about this, like because I think of sound into one is obviously music as background music, but I also think about sound effects like transitions and woo. And in audio stories, there's ways to generate like let's say you're talking about horses and there's a horse running in the background. You can just add some realism to it. So so that's why in my head I think of those two things as slightly separate, and I feel like we can have both if we want to. The question is like, how much do you guys want to? So I mean, let us know if that sounds cool to you, if you want to use it, etc.
Yeah,
totally. There's like a delay, usually like a 15-20 second delay I find between the restream and people actually seeing it on YouTube. So just a heads up.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Fair, fair.
No, it's pretty interesting. Actually, I don't know if you know this, Bilal, but when we first started down the journey of like AI podcast creation, one of the first podcasts we had was a podcast between Ulysses Grant and Robert E. Lee.
Oh,
It was
wow.
a Civil War Confederate
And they
Union.
made up, and there was no war.
Yeah. No, but it was super interesting because it was just like we created the voice of both of them and we put it over like its background track of a campfire, like crackling sound. And I wonder at the end of the day how many people listened to it. It was a decent amount of people, I think.
Yeah, I think it's still getting listened. It's like I think it's over 100 people.
Well, it comes back to what one of the most famous pieces of philosophy was the Socratic dialogue, right? I mean, and the whole point was Socrates would, in order to make an argument, he would actually make a conversation. He would like say something, and then he would play someone who was against him. And the whole idea is having this back and forth gives you a richer picture of the core idea. And I think there's some power to it, and that's basically in today's world, that's a podcast, right? You know, steelman the argument, you know, maybe you're pro tariffs or
Right.
you're anti-tariffs, right? So you can have a proper tariff conversation. Like you can understand tariffs way better when you have for and against both going. And it's not like a news channel where people are yelling over each other and you come away 15 minutes later not really learning anything. It's more, okay, this is an actual conversation. So I found that very interesting. Also, like kind of going back to our learning philosophy, I think I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. There's this I've been hearing this idea. It's almost a very controversial idea, but about how reading is dead. Some tech forward people are saying that, oh, you know, text is inefficient and we're just going to consume audio and video. And there's something that my gut just resists that, because there's something about text that in our head we've always had a hierarchy that reading is actual real learning and audio and video is more like consuming. And if you really dig deep into what that is because I feel like it's because audio and video you can cheat more, because with reading you really have to look at the page, you have to take the words in, so you absorb more. But audio, you can maybe wash the dishes, you can kind of look forward, and it can give you the illusion of learning. Not that you don't learn, but it's more likely to give you an illusion of learning versus a book. And I think that's where we have this issue. And so this comes back to our spaced repetition. Like, how do we create audio media which actually facilitates the learning and gets you something, you know, in your head just as a book would, you know? So I found that fascinating. I think it's a great way to think about, you know, different a metric about how, you know, the insight you can get from a medium.
It's super interesting too, when it comes into like for podcasting. It's like there's two kind of groups. I would say, like, you listen to a podcast to actually absorb what they're talking about, or you listen to a podcast to just kind of be like, oh, I'm just passively listening and it's entertaining.
Right.
And, you know, both of those are very possible and easy to create with JellyPod. We see both of them all the time. Interesting use cases. And it's like, yeah, it's like I have a podcast, my favorite podcast, and it's very educational. Like, I'm listening actively. I don't want to be doing anything else besides just listening to that and maybe walking around. But there's other podcasts where I just, you know, it goes in one ear and out the other. Right. And I'm like, I'll maybe absorb one thing from that whole podcast. And so it's really cool when I will create something on JellyPod, even within the podcast transcript and within the episode itself. It's like if we're talking, let's say, global news, you know, and there's like these 3 stories. How do I ensure that each story is kind of spaced out within the podcast and talked about? And it kind of goes back to even like writing and retention and like, yeah. Can you be a producer of content that is strategic in how you want your episode to sound? And that goes back to the outline in JellyPod. So like the big thing, you know, we give you this basic outline. You give us sources. You give JellyPod sources. JellyPod gives you back an outline. And that's step 1. And that outline really allows you at a high level to be like, hey, I want the same thing to be talked about 3 times or 1 time or whatever. And hopefully the transcript reflects that. Then you could edit and go back and make changes. So,
yeah, but I do love that the learning riff to me is fascinating, just because of how, like, the research around how people learn differently. But I mean, Bilal, I think you might find this interesting. Like me and Pearson have riffed on this since like the earliest days. But the big question, or sorry, a thought that I've always had is, people foundationally learn through audio, right? When you are a baby, you learn through your ears first, not through your, I guess you through, that's tough. Maybe through your eyes too, but definitely not through letters, right? You learn through your, but language and meaning, you first learn through your ears before you learn through letters and through your eyes. It's almost like language is or letters are like an extra dongle to attach to your learning.
Right.
So there's something about podcasts that hits something so foundational, right? You're overhearing a conversation the same way that as a kid you overhear the things that you learn and become your foundation. So while I do agree, I think you can skim faster and you can get more volume of information through reading, and that's why it'll never go away. It's very useful in that way. The impact is very different, I think, when you hear something, and it's just something different.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I actually think audio video will take a huge fraction of learning, and I think that's fine. There's the whole boomer take, the young people, they're just on TikTok, they're not learning anymore. But there's this really funny tweet I saw. It was basically they took articles from 1890 every 10 years, and it was so funny because every 10 years it was like old people were like young people today, they don't work hard. They just don't work hard, and it's so crazy. You go to their 20s, they're like, oh, they're just watching they're listening to radio anymore. Like, what's going to happen? They're just listening to radio. And then the 50s, like, now they're watching TV. Wow, it's like our society is ruined, right? And it's so interesting to see how every technology piece that happens. And what happens, people adapt. And so it might be, I do think reading will become less of as a fraction. It'll always be there, I agree with you, but I think it'll become less of a fraction. But I think audio and video as they are will become way more effective, because this is what generative AI gives you, is like lets you tweak stuff, lets you mix and match stuff. We have hopefully it will come soon. I'm not promising anything in terms of deadline, but I think captions, this is why people love captions too, because that kind of combines text and audio in a way. Because there's a reason a lot of people I know love subtitles and stuff. Even though they're listening, they don't have bad hearing and stuff. But there's something about just following literally the words on the screen as you're hearing that just, for me at least, feels like I really soak it in, right? And so it's very interesting.
It's super. I was just going to bring up the captions thing, because I was just like, okay, now you combine audio and video with text in a way that you can consume content pretty easily. I'd be really curious if you're in the audience right now and you would want to see captions on your video. Just give like a thumbs up, give a hi. Just say captions in the comments if captions is something you wanted on your videos. That'd be super cool.
Yeah.
I know I want it, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw up a yes, please. Yes. That's gonna be awesome. I'm exactly one of those people that, like, I can hear it just fine, but when you read it, it's like, it's a double. It's getting you from both directions. It's great.
Yeah.
I thought it would be pretty cool just to share with everybody here, like, the big change. I mean, we've been rolling out changes, over the past months. Every time. So hopefully every weekly Wednesday we release something new that we can share with everybody. But one of the big things that changed this week was that, and we see Mohammed in here wants the captions. Let's go.
Mohammed, thank you.
Want captions in your videos, post captions in the chat, and we'll prioritize that and we'll get those out there for you.
Dr. Hoover from Florida probably also wants captions. Didn't say it, but I'm going to go ahead and say he wants captions.
He wants captions. He wants captions.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the big things that rolled out this week, if you've checked out JellyPod on the homepage changed. So there used to be this like dashboard. It was a kind of cool dashboard. I liked it. I built it, but we chucked it over, we threw it away, and now you just get right smack in the middle, a text box. Very familiar. If you use ChatGPT, if you've used any of those AI chatbot type of services, it's familiar look, where there's a chatbot in the middle, there's like a web search icon on the left, and everything there. That's just been brought up to the very first step in your studio. So there's no more, you have to go dig down into your podcast, click new episode. It's right there. You can get started with creating your new podcast episode right from the homepage. And you can also then drag or drop down. There's a drop down on the top left that allows you to select the podcast. So by default, everybody's going to get their first podcast. So right when you sign up, you already have a podcast that has 2 hosts, Eric and Ruby. Those are our 2 favorite hosts, but you can change those hosts. You can create new hosts. You can create new podcasts, but it just accelerates that initial creation for you. So if you're a new user watching the live stream today for the first time, I'd love to know your feedback and how that experience was, because you can just get started way more quickly. So, yeah.
And for all those people, and there's a lot of people who in the chat were like, or in the intercom were like, "Hey, I don't get it. I already made my podcast. Where is it?" But they had just made the series. This is for you, right?
Yeah.
Now you make it and you got it. You got the audio. There is such a disconnect between podcast and episode, and everyone considers when they say, "Have you heard that podcast?" People use it to mean episode. So often, even though it's both. They use both.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. We saw some cool increase on the metrics. And then I also realized that one metric was removed on accident yesterday. So that was fixed. So we could see how everybody's loving it better now. But Eric said he tried to get a surfer style voice, but to no avail.
I'm gonna try to add a surfer style voice, and I will ping you, Eric, after this call, if I can get it into the platform.
Eric, you can also, like, we have a voice clone feature. So if you can get a surfer voice of a sample, and you can load that, and that should give you a voice.
Right.
Yeah, bro.
That. Yeah.
I
can
send you a sample of me pretending to be a surfer.
Yes.
No promises.
You guys remember that video from like 10 years ago where it was this like dude was like, smack the lip, whoopah, and like it's a meme.
My favorite, if either using something like Pixabay or even in YouTube, if you go, you can filter for Creative Commons, and you can get copyright-free videos, and those are public videos you can reuse easily. And I think it's as long as you attribute them, and sometimes you don't even have to do that depending on the license, you can get a surfer voice, I'm sure, which is copyright free, and you can use that. I think that should be fine.
Sweet. No, that's it.
Yeah, there you go.
Foundational health solutions. So crazy easy. Nice with your voice clone. If you want to post, if that's a public podcast, you want to throw it in the chat, that'd be awesome. I mean, I'd love to take a listen, and I think a lot of people on the live stream would want to hear it too. But if it's not public, no worries. But that's awesome. Love to see it.
The medical cases have been awesome. I feel like there's so many medical podcasts now. I've created several now, and very cool. The medical podcasts do really well on Spotify. We had someone go viral recently on Spotify with a podcast about ADHD.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But there really seems to be something here with medical. I mean, it really feels good to be helping share that kind of information. Because I feel like so often, like the smartest people become doctors, right? And that information is trapped in med schools and in their heads, and you have to go pay, wait 2 months to get that information out of their head and for a 30-minute appointment.
Yeah.
But to be able to get it out into the world and easily accessible is awesome.
Yeah, I just think it's just trade-off, because like people who are actual experts, they don't have time to do podcasts, and people who do podcasts are the more salesy, like, they're more about this polish, right? And so you always will have these people who pretend to be like, we always have this gap. And so this is how JellyPod bridges that gap. Like, you can take what's in your head, your expertise, your experience, and just give us the sources and just, create podcasts. This is why I think it's so powerful.
First, I think this is totally ball. I just had to flag this because this is the first time I've noticed this in our life at JellyPod, which is a user has listened to another user's podcast through no work of our own.
That's cool.
That's cool.
I wonder how you found it. Eric, how'd you find it? Was it through the Explore page or some other?
He saw it viral on Spotify.
That'd be nuts. That'd be crazy.
Nuts.
Makes me want to create like a tree, like 23andMe cousin family or whatever, like podcast people who are listening to each other's podcasts, or how close they are to each other.
You know what's interesting? We know the distribution of what people are creating on our platform, like education and business and technology. I'm just curious, like in general, I would be curious to see the stats on Spotify itself. like, is the distribution of what's being created on JellyPod, does that match the distribution of podcasts on Spotify? Like, is education the number one podcast category on Spotify, and is like business 2, technology 3? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think we've talked about. I think we need to take that education category and maybe split it up a bit more to kind of get more insight, because education is just kind of a catch-all for everything.
right.
I mean, everything is education if you think about it,
No,
right?
totally.
So
If anyone from Spotify is listening here, can we please add our own categories or like more categories? Because these are categories that are defined by Spotify, and it has to choose one of these. So it's like, but maybe you could have we have secondary categories too, and Apple Podcasts allows way more secondary categories than Spotify does, and it's kind of weird. But yeah.
Very cool. Well, foundational health is a bit more about that podcast we're talking about, which is this is great. This is exactly what we set out to do. So it's nice to see that people are actually feeling it.
Right. That's awesome. And Jason, or for everybody in the audience, if you want to listen to some of the customer stories, Jason's been interviewing a bunch of customers and what they're creating, like how Dr. Rafai 6x'd his YouTube subscribers with his ADHD podcast, The Virtual Psychiatrist. And these other podcasters, they're really cool to listen to the stories, like Mark Morgan and what he's doing with his learning and development trainings. And that series, Customer Stories, is on YouTube, but it's also now as a podcast series on Spotify as well. So I was listening to one of them and I wanted to go on a walk, but it wasn't on Spotify yet. I was like, oh, wait, rather than being just on YouTube, let's put it on Spotify too. So if you want to listen to what other people are creating, check out the Customer Stories, JellyPod Customer Stories on YouTube or on Spotify, and might get some inspiration on how people are using the platform. So, and I think that's how Eric found.
Yeah, we also have an Explore page, which we're gonna make that way. Add a lot more stuff there. But yeah, it's a great way to get a gist of what people are creating as well.
If you've ever checked out the Explore page, just leave a comment Explore in the stream. Love to know if you've checked out that page before. And if you haven't, say no. If you've never checked out the Explore page, say no in the comments. I'll say no.
And it's /explore for everyone who wants to. It's jellypod.ai/explore.
Right.
It shows some of the most recent ones. Easy way to get inspired, because it's just these podcasts run the full gambit. We've got doctors helping with diseases. Just recently, we have this guy who's educating financial services companies in Canada about employees with disabilities and how to best support them. Yeah.
Right.
We got a guy with a chess academy who's helping little kids learn chess.
That one's cool.
Yeah.
He was there since the beta, I think. The chess.
Yeah. We need to. The trouble is at the time zones. It's hard to get him on. I was supposed to chat with him last week on Monday, but then I had to go drop off my kid at school. It was like at the 8 o'clock it's just it didn't work out. So frustrating. I'm so excited to talk to him. He's got such a cool podcast.
Yeah.
Got a question about accents, Spanish accents. A pro tip, you might want to try this. Could be cool. Use a non-Spanish voice and set the podcast to Spanish. Every language, every host, every voice speaks every language. So I love getting the British guy to speak like Russian or Chinese. Honestly, Chinese, but it's still cool to see it. I threw in some Japanese and I understand a word here and there, and that was cool too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again,
if there's particular, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, and as you talked about the voice cloning, if there's a specific Spanish style you want, you can also clone that sample and use that as well.
Totally. And if you still can't find anything you like, just message support, and I will go and I'll I'll try and configure some additional Spanish voices. Just let me know.
And also, this is something that Jason and I discussed yesterday, really briefly, about the hats. if you like the hats and the shirts, Bilal's wearing the shirt too. We were just debating. We're like, should we just throw up a store or something? So if you want Jelly Pod merch, let us know. Either message us in the chat right now or leave a comment, like say I want merch, or message us
Merch.
or like we might just throw up a quick store, like a drop shipping on demand sort of store to get some Jelly Pod merch. That'd be pretty cool because I like the hats. I mean, I think we're all wearing them. We're all twinning right now, so yeah. But I know we're at 10:30, so I know Eric's been. I love the activity here today, Eric. It's great.
And yeah, please, Foundational Health Solutions. Just if you want to message me in the chat, which is the need help icon in the bottom right corner of the product, I'll be there and we can schedule some time because I'd love to hear your story. I think everybody would.
Totally.
James Brown needs a hat.
Nice. He needs a hat. Cool.
James needs a hat. We need a hat.
Yeah.
Love it.
And,
James Brown's interviews coming soon too. Yeah, for all the people that have recorded interviews but haven't yet seen them come out, just know it's because there's a queue of them. So I've got like probably 15 of them left, and I'm trying to only release 2 a week. So that's a big reason why. It was a blast talking to James. James is like spreading kindness into the world and just trying to be a positive light and trying to encourage people through his podcast. So a shout out there. You will see his podcast eventually. It's just I'm going chronologically.
And this is the customer stories video series.
That's right. / customer dash stories for those taking notes.
Cool. Yeah, no, and Eric, I thanks so much for all the comments. This is great. And Foundational Health Service Solutions and everyone else that's on here. Swag. And I mean, I've heard this. A lot of people have asked for some merch, so we'll keep you updated on the progress there. But I don't know. What do you guys think? 10:30 ish. Should we
call it?
Yeah.
You want to call it? Okay. So I mean, if this is your first time today on our weekly Wednesday, we do this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We just hop onto this call and chat about Jelly Pod, what people are using it for, shout out all of our users, and just go over some cool insights, tips, what's been released. So check us out every Wednesday, weekly Wednesday, and yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, go for it, Eric.
Yeah, do it, Eric. That's awesome.
Go, Eric, go.
Yeah.
If you need some encouragement, just pop in the chat. We're here to encourage. And Franny, if you're okay, if Franny is here, say hello. Do we need to do a wellness check?
I know.
Franny, we miss you, Franny. If you watch on the replay, thank you. And everyone else who has ever chimed in. Thank you so much.
Okay.